I had learned to carry myself like nothing could shake me. The glass walls of my corner office reflected back a woman who looked composed, unbothered, successful. A silk blouse, perfectly tailored pants, and heels that clicked against marble floors with a rhythm that almost sounded like confidence itself. Almost. From this height, the New York skyline stretched out like a promise, bright, sharp, untouchable. And yet, inside me, the old wound pulsed. The one I kept hidden, even from the colleagues who admired me, even from the investors who trusted me with millions. My phone buzzed against the polished walnut desk. I glanced at the screen. The name stopped me. Richard Cole. The same Richard Cole who once smirked at my proposal slides, flipped through my notes like they were scraps, and told me, "Maybe next time, Emily." As if my work had been nothing more than a distraction in his busy day. Now his name appeared with a subject line bold enough to make me laugh out loud. Opportunity for partnership urgent. I leaned back in my chair, letting the irony settle in. The city hummed outside my window, horns blaring and life rushing forward. My pulse steadied, not from fear, but from clarity. The man who ignored my project years ago was about to discover the truth. Because I wasn't here to pitch anymore. I was here to invest. Years ago, before the skyline belonged to me, I was just another face in a crowded office, hungry, hopeful, and naive enough to believe that hard work always spoke for itself. I can still see it. The Monday morning pitch meeting, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the stale scent of burnt coffee lingering in the air. My palms were damp against the thin folder I carried, filled with weeks of research, late-night sketches, and an idea I believed could change everything. I had rehearsed my presentation 100 times in the mirror of my tiny Brooklyn apartment. My voice steady, my points sharp. I wanted them to see me not just as another junior analyst, but as someone worth listening to. When it was finally my turn, I stood at the front of that boardroom, heart pounding but steady. This model, I began, has the potential to expand our market reach by 40% within the next year. My voice grew more confident as I flipped through my slides, watching a few heads nod, watching hope spark in my chest. And then Richard, my boss, my supposed mentor. He didn't even look at the screen. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes glazed with impatience. When I finished, there was a heartbeat of silence, the kind that swallows your courage whole. Then he cleared his throat. "Thank you, Emily," he said, already shuffling his papers. "We'll circle back if it's relevant." Relevant. The word cut deeper than I let anyone see. My hands shook as I gathered my notes, trying to mask the humiliation burning across my cheeks. Around me, people avoided my gaze. It was easier to look away than to witness someone being dismissed. Later that day, I found myself in the break room, gripping a chipped ceramic mug of coffee like it was the only thing keeping me upright. That's when my grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, words she'd repeated since I was little. "Don't wait for permission to prove your worth. If they don't open the door, build your own." That night, back in my cramped apartment, I pulled out the notebook where I had scribbled every detail of my project. I ran my fingers across the ink-stained pages. This wasn't just an idea. It was my idea. My future. And if Richard Cole couldn't see it, then maybe it wasn't his to have. The night Richard dismissed my work, I didn't cry. At least not right away. Instead, I sat at my desk, staring at the skyline through the cracked blinds of my apartment window, the city buzzing like it didn't care whether I succeeded or failed. Eventually, the tears came, but so did the resolve. I pulled out that notebook, the one I had carried since college, filled with ideas people said were too ambitious. I rewrote every calculation, every strategy, until dawn smeared pink across the sky. By the time I finally closed my eyes, I knew one thing. I would bring my vision to life, even if I had to do it alone. The beginning was brutal. I worked 2 part-time jobs to cover rent, using every free moment to refine my project. Nights blurred into mornings, fueled by cheap coffee and takeout containers. I remember sitting in a rented co-working space downtown, my laptop balanced on a wobbly table, trying to look confident while my stomach twisted with fear. Then came a turning point. Margaret Stevens. She was a seasoned consultant with silver hair and a sharper eye than anyone I'd ever met. I met her at a networking event I almost didn't attend because I couldn't afford the ticket. But she saw something in me, something Richard never had. "Your idea isn't just good, Emily," she told me, flipping through my sketches. "It's brilliant. And you've got the fire to see it through." With her mentorship, I learned more than I had in 4 years at the firm. She taught me how to negotiate without flinching, how to turn rejection into leverage, how to carry myself like I belonged in every room. Still, it wasn't easy. Banks turned me down. Investors shook their heads. More than once, I thought about giving up. But then a small client, a startup no one else believed in, took a chance on me. The day they signed my first contract, I sat in that same co-working space, staring at my laptop screen with trembling hands. Tears blurred the numbers, but this time they were tears of relief. From there, the wins came slowly, but they came. One client led to another, and soon I wasn't just surviving, I was building something real. A company, a reputation, a future. But I didn't broadcast it. I kept my victories quiet, sharing only the safe pieces online, late-night coffee selfies, vague mentions of exciting projects. To the world, I was just hustling, maybe still struggling. To me, I was laying the foundation of something bigger than anyone, including Richard, could have imagined. Years passed. My office changed from a rented desk to a floor of my own. My name began appearing in trade magazines, whispered at conferences. I had investors calling me. And through it all, I held on to that notebook. Its pages worn, its corners frayed, but its meaning intact. Proof of the night, I chose to believe in myself when no one else did. Now, sitting in my glass-walled office, I realized the full circle was about to complete itself. The man who ignored my project was reaching out, not to offer me a promotion, not to finally recognize my worth, but because he needed me. And I had never been more ready. The email had been short, almost desperate. A polite invitation disguised as a plea. Richard wanted to meet, to discuss a potential collaboration. He didn't know yet who I had become. The morning of the meeting, I walked into his office building with my head high and my heels clicking across polished marble floors. Funny how once upon a time, the very same sound used to intimidate me. Now it echoed like a drumbeat of power. The receptionist looked up, surprised, then hurried to offer me coffee. She didn't know me. Of course she didn't. I had long stopped being just another employee here. When I stepped into the conference room, Richard was already there. His hair, once dark and commanding, had thinned at the temples. The tailored suit still looked expensive, but the strain showed in his face. His company was bleeding. I could see it in the too bright smile, the folders stacked too neatly as if order could mask desperation. "Emily," he said, rising to greet me, as though we were old friends. "It's been too long. Too long." My lips almost curled into a smile. He hadn't thought of me once in all these years, I was sure. Yet here we were. I sat across from him, crossing my legs deliberately, taking my time. "Richard," I replied smoothly. "You said it was urgent?" He launched into his pitch. Charts, numbers, projections, all the jargon I once begged him to listen to when it was my idea on the line. I nodded politely, sipping the coffee his assistant had placed in front of me, letting him talk himself into exhaustion. Finally, he leaned forward. "We're seeking new investors to help us scale this model. With your background, I knew you'd appreciate the vision." My background? The irony nearly choked me. I reached into my bag and placed a worn leather notebook on the glossy table between us. He glanced at it, confused, until I opened it to a page filled with sketches and calculations dated years ago. My handwriting stared back at both of us. His eyes flickered. Recognition. Shock. "This," I said quietly, "was my vision. The one you dismissed. The one you told me wasn't relevant." The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. For the first time, Richard had no words. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Emily, I cut him off with a raised hand, my voice steady, calm, but sharp enough to cut through the air. I built my company on the foundation of this project. I believed in it when no one else did. And now, your survival depends on me." He stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. Gone was the junior analyst desperate for approval. Sitting before him was the woman who had everything he once denied her: power, influence, independence. The silence stretched. I let him sit with it. Let him feel the weight of all the years I carried, the humiliation he had handed me so casually. Finally, I leaned forward, my fingers brushing the edges of the notebook. "You asked me here as a potential investor, Richard. What you didn't realize is, I'm not just interested. I'm your best, and perhaps only, option." His face paled. For a moment, he looked smaller somehow, stripped of the arrogance that had once filled every inch of him. And in that moment, the balance of power shifted completely. I had walked into his office once, years ago, as a forgotten employee with trembling hands. Today, I sat across from him as the woman who could decide his future.
And he knew it.
Richard shifted in his chair, trying to recover the authority he once held so effortlessly. "Emily, I'll admit, I underestimated you back then," he said, forcing a tight smile. "But clearly you've built something remarkable. We can put the past behind us and move forward as partners." I tilted my head, studying him. He still thought this was negotiation as usual, a chess game he could win with charm and half-truths.
But the board was mine now.
"Partnership," I repeated softly, letting the word linger. "You're asking for more than money, Richard. You're asking for trust. And after what happened, trust comes with conditions." His smile faltered. "Conditions?" "Yes." I folded my hands neatly on the table. "If I invest, this company doesn't just get funding. It gets transformation. And you either agree to it, or you walk away empty-handed." He straightened in his chair, but I didn't give him the chance to speak. "First," I said, my voice steady, "innovation will no longer be dismissed because of who presents it. If an idea is good, it gets a seat at the table. No more silencing junior staff, no more brushing off talent because it threatens your ego." Richard's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. "Second," I continued, "women will not just fill the token positions you've been comfortable offering. They will lead. Effective immediately. I want structural changes, mentorship programs, promotions based on merit, and an end to the old boys club that has kept this place stagnant for years." I leaned in slightly, my voice lowering, sharper now. "I was one of those women once. I won't let anyone else go through what I did." He swallowed hard. "And the third," a pause. I tapped my fingers gently against the notebook, the sound echoing in the still room. "Third, you will step back. Not out, but back. You'll stay as a figurehead, but decisions, real decisions, will pass through a new leadership council. A team I choose. People who understand vision, not just status." His face flushed red. I could see the anger battling with desperation, pride clawing at the edges of reason. For a moment I thought he might refuse. But then he exhaled, his shoulders sagging under the weight of reality. "You're asking me to give up control of my own company," he said slowly. "No," I corrected, leaning back with calm authority. "I'm offering you a chance to save it. Without me, this company crumbles within the year. With me, it evolves and survives. The choice is yours." The silence stretched again. He rubbed a hand across his forehead, and for the first time, Richard Cole looked less like a titan of industry and more like a man staring at the end of his reign. Finally, he nodded.
"Fine.
On your terms." I didn't smile. Not yet. This wasn't about gloating. This was about rewriting the rules for me and for every woman who would walk through these doors after me. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Contracts signed, leadership changes announced, and the slow but certain hum of transformation filling halls that had once silenced so many voices. I walked through the office one morning, heels clicking against the familiar marble. But this time, I wasn't the overlooked junior analyst. I was the woman whose name carried weight, whose decisions shaped futures. I saw young employees fresh out of college, clutching their own notebooks, their own fragile dreams, look up at me with something I never had when I was in their shoes. hope. The changes were already in motion. Mentorship programs launching, women promoted into real leadership, and meetings where every voice mattered. One afternoon, I stepped into my private office, sunlight spilling across the desk. I pulled open a drawer and took out the old, leather-bound notebook. Its pages were worn thin, corners frayed, margins filled with scribbled doubts and midnight determination. I ran my fingers over the faded ink. This notebook had once been a symbol of rejection, of a door slammed in my face. Now it was the blueprint of an empire. Proof that the moment he dismissed me was the very moment I chose myself. And strangely, I felt no bitterness. Richard had given me pain, yes, but that pain had forged me into someone stronger, sharper, more resilient than I ever imagined. Without it, I might never have built my own path. I thought of my grandmother's words again. If they don't open the door, build your own. I had built more than a door. I had built an entire house, and now others would have a place inside it too. As I closed the notebook, I glanced out at the skyline, the same city that once felt so indifferent to me. Now it reflected back a truth I had earned. Years ago, my boss ignored my project. Today, I was the one investing in his survival. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'd be investing in something even greater. Every woman who refused to be silenced.